We have the minutes of the supervisors meetings of November 19 and December 4. Do I hear a motion to accept them as presented?
So moved. Second.
Okay, those in favor? Aye. Okay, Lisa, did you present the final budget plan for 2013?
At the November meeting, we presented the budget for 2013, and it's been up on the website since the end of October. The budget hasn't changed since the last meeting. So I ask that the Board of Supervisors adopt Resolution 2012-17, adopting the 2013 budget, which was made available on November 19th at the public meeting, and it was presented in its final form.
I would make that motion to approve that resolution.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Are there any questions or comments from the floor? Seeing no questions, I move the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Lisa, you're on for the manager's report.
I wanted to announce that the 2013 township assessment is approximately $718,919,000 versus last year, which was $719,215,000. The supervisors will not have a work session in January since their public meeting, their reorganizational meeting will be the night before, January 7th at 7:30. I ask that all of you look at the historic display in the back of the room. The historic committee spends a lot of time on that display, and they ask that everybody take a moment to look at it at the end of the meeting. At the last work session, we talked about earned income tax collection of non-residents, and I have talked to Keystone Tax Collection, which is our tax collector for earned income tax. They are scheduled to come to our February 5th work session to answer questions about earned income tax collection. They did tell me that the laws are not very clear about earned income tax collection, and that a contractor has to work in the township for 3 months before they're obligated to pay earned income tax. So somebody who comes in to put a new roof on or an addition does not have to pay earned income tax in the township. They also said that if their home base, where their business is located, if they have to pay earned income tax where that is, they don't have to pay it here. But they will come in and answer any questions. They did say that the one thing we can do is send named contractors that are here doing big development to them, and they will confirm if they're paying taxes or not. So we will start doing that.
I missed the first part of your point there. Do I assume that what you just said is true for all Chester County?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
They are the tax collector for the entire county.
Okay.
Okay. Yes?
On the subject of the earned income tax,
Could you identify yourself?
Lou Alfano, I'm sorry, Mike.
Sorry?
Lou Alfano.
Thank you.
On the subject of the earned income tax, the giant up on
Yes.
Route 1, part of it is in the county, rather the township, I'm sorry.
Correct. The building is
The
not.
building is.
The building is, oh, that's nice. So in other words, we can't collect any earned income tax from the
We've gone
giant.
down that path, but thank you for thinking of it.
At the last meeting, we presented a business advisory committee, and we posted the proposed committee and the mission and roles and responsibility of the committee on the website about a month and a half ago. This proposed committee has been worked on by Bill McLaughlin, John Hadrick, Matt Sabo, Jim Shipletowski, Bob Listerman, and Jim Clymer. And the supervisors have all agreed with the mission of the committee. So we left it up on the website for anybody to give any input on it. I haven't received any. So tonight the supervisors are going to vote on the committee.
We haven't received any comments from anyone. This is a new committee. I think it still needs some input, preferably from the citizens of Kennett Township. And I would suggest that we postpone the decision at least until the next public meeting. But that's my opinion, and I'd like to hear anybody else's comments, please.
Well, it's been up on the website
Yeah, I know
for a
that.
while.
Yeah.
Can you tell us, Mike, please, what it is that you're concerned about that we can't deal with it tonight, and then if we
No.
need to make adjustments in the future?
No, I can't because I haven't had benefit of public input. The website has been pretty vacant without comment.
In order to be able to focus the discussion, I'll make the motion that we adopt the mission roles and responsibilities for the Kennett Township Business Advisory Committee as presented to this body in November, and which has been circulated on the website as well.
I'll second that.
Okay, is there any public comment? Yes, Phil?
I would like to see it get moving because I think it's going to benefit the supervisors and to Lisa. And obviously, the supervisors have every right to change course or change some aspects of the committee, and it's bylaws. It doesn't have bylaws at this point, but it's sort of written up in a mission statement. So it'd be interesting to get this going and to see what type of benefit you all think it has.
I understand your point. Okay. Anyone else? Go ahead.
I agree with Bill.
Well,
Lou Alfano again. I agree with Bill. We should get moving,
okay.
get it started. Changes can always be made and adjustments can always be made by the board at a later time. To postpone is just to put more delay on the action of the Business Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Anybody else? Seeing no other questions, I move the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Those abstaining? Aye. Okay.
A couple months ago, the supervisors talked about an 1847 map that was given to the township. The supervisors agreed to restore the map, which was going to cost approximately $8,500. Since then, the cost has increased to $2,500. So we are no longer restoring it in the original proposed way. And Sarah Meadows is here from our Historic Commission. She's going to explain the route they were taking now.
Originally, we took, can everybody hear me?
We can hear you.
Originally, we took it into Philadelphia to do at the Conservation Center, which is a really well-known, well-respected organization. So we thought that that was the way to go, but there were problems that we encountered, so it got really expensive, and we all felt uncomfortable with the cost. We feel it's a very important map to have on display in the lobby, hopefully. It's an 1847 map. It's very large. It's about 50 by 44 inches. It'll look really nice up there in the lobby. And it's a map of all of Chester County, and it shows, it's before the railroads came to this county. So it has a lot of mills and old roads and things. So the Historic Commission really feels it's important. But what we've decided now is to get a digital reproduction of the map. And it will be full size. It will be cleaned up. It was in pretty bad condition. It had varnish on it. And this, when they digitally reproduce it, they can take it back to its original pristine condition. A lot of museums use digital reproductions for display in the museums. So we feel that this is going to be a good alternative. So we've retrieved the map from Philadelphia, and we took it down to a company called Aztec in Wilmington, who we got a lot of references and recommendations for them. And the price is drastically less. It's going to be about $1,200. And then we're going to have it framed, which will probably be another $1,200, $1,200 to $1,500. Just rough estimates there, but it's certainly going to be a big savings, and I think we're still going to have a map that we can all be proud of and share with the community. The Historic Commission feels it is an important asset for us, and it was given to the township by the Woodward family. So it's an important asset to be able to share with the whole community. And what we plan to do is take the original, even though it's not in good shape, and put it up in near our history room so that we can reference it. And we're also going to have a copy that'll fit in the map drawer that we can use for reference material. So I think, all in all, I think we're going to come up with something that we can all be proud of and share with the community.
Thank you, Sarah.
Yes, I'm continuing to be concerned about the acid in the material that will cause deterioration of the
Original.
matrix of the map.
Of the original?
Of the original. Can you tell me, is anything being done to stabilize that, even without doing the other things to restore it?
It seemed to be that any kind of restoration or stabilization was going to be quite expensive. So we decided that we would just, we'd like to get the original framed and protected in that way. And we're going to use the Station Gallery in Greenville. Get their advice. They were recommended by Windsor for some other things that people have had done. So we feel they can probably give us some advice how we can protect the original. But we're not going to, it's not going to be very presentable. It's yellow, it's got varnish on it, it's got some cracks and things. So it's going to look like an old map. But
That's what it is.
Right. But this reproduction will look like it did when it was brand new, because they can take away all the yellow and enhance it. So, and we'll have a CD with the map on it too, so we can reproduce copies in the future if we want. And that's all including the price. So, unfortunately, the map itself isn't that valuable that it's worth spending as much money as it grew to be, because they couldn't use the conventional method of removing the varnish because it removed color. So it just got way out of hand. So there really isn't anything we can do. But we'll have a good copy. And nobody will ever know if we don't tell them.
Word will get out.
And any more? Yes.
Did they offer to dip it so it would stop any more deterioration for you?
No, they didn't. I don't think they can do that kind of thing because it was mounted on linen, mounted on a board, had material wrapped around the edges, so it got quite complicated to handle it.
Richard, Chester County Press. Sarah, easy question. Spelling of your first and last name, please?
S-A-R-A, and Meadows, just like Meadows.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah.
Mr. Chairman, can I just have a minute? I don't want to startle anybody, but I got to do something here.
Stink bug? Oh,
There you go.
thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't even know it was there.
Kennett, we don't have you on the agenda, but we're coming to the end of our new business, not quite, but if you would be gracious enough to tell us why you're here and
Thank you, sir.
and then tell us what you're going to tell us.
Thank you. Evening, everyone. My name is Lieutenant Rich D'Ambrosio. I'm the station commander at the Avondale Barracks. I just asked to come out tonight just to give a quick rundown of the types of calls that we've handled in the township in the past 90 days and answer any questions that anyone may have of me. The state police has responded to 284 incidents in the township in the past 90 days. That's every kind of call, from the most serious call to stuff that we encounter out on the roadway, to false alarms and that sort of stuff. So it's every single call that we've handled in the township in 90 days.
It averages about 3 a day.
Yeah, pretty much. And to break those numbers down just a little bit more, out of the 284, we've handled 37 car crashes in the township. We've handled 13 criminal incidents, and by criminal incidents I mean anything that we can make an arrest on, from as serious to an assault to something as minor as mailbox smashing or disorderly conduct, something like that. Anything that can result in an arrest is considered a criminal incident. So, like I said, we've handled 13 of those. There's no real patterns to some of the criminal incidents that we're seeing. You see a couple of thefts from motor vehicles. We had 2 burglaries in the township, one from a residence, one from a business. A couple of criminal mischief incidents. So again, knock on wood, nothing really serious in the past 90 days. And we've made 8 DUI arrests in the township. Our troopers have while out on patrol. So again, we continue to work very well with the chief here. Chief McCarthy's in and out of the station numerous times a week, giving us information, we're giving him information. So, the relationship that we have with the township police department has been excellent.
Glad to hear it.
Any questions from me?
Bill?
Yes, Bill, what is the authorized level of troopers at the Avondale station?
We are authorized, our complement for patrol troopers is 44, and then we also have an additional 10 criminal detectives. We're not at those numbers right now, but just like all the other barracks in the state, everyone's feeling the pinch right now from what's going on with the budget. Fortunately, we have a cadet class graduating this Friday from the academy, and our troop is getting 10 troopers. Avondale is getting 4 of those.
And how many will that give us as total troopers?
We'll still be short. I don't give out our total complement numbers, but we are still short. Now, I can tell you, I've been on the job for 22 years, and 18 of those years have been at Avondale, and I can't ever remember a time when we've been up to complement. So, our guys, they adapt. I mean, these young troopers, they don't know how many guys they're supposed to have, and we as bosses try to keep that from them because we don't want to discourage them. So if they think it's normal to have 2 guys on the road, then so be it, then they do the job. So I don't want to give them any more reason to complain than they already do. But I think they're doing an excellent job there with what we have. And like I said, I mean, the entire state is feeling the pinch right now. It's not just our barracks.
Thanks very much, Lieutenant.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Next order of business is the Conley easement. We talked about this before, and I'm going to go ahead and make a motion. And the motion is that we move to offer Mr. Conley $150,000 to purchase the conservation easement on his property, which consists of approximately 22 acres, and it is on Hillendale Road, near the corner of Byard. This is contingent upon signing an agreement to proceed, contingent on remarking the footprint of the 1 house and 1 secondary building that he wants to include as his right on the property, and then demarking a public access trail if the applicant so requests it. The township will pay to draw the purchase agreement, to prepare the baseline study, and to draw the conservation agreement itself, and prepare all the closing documents, and will pay approximately $5,000 in an escrow endowment. Those costs to the township run approximately $20,000. And that's my motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Now, we have open to questions, if anybody would have a question or a comment.
Mike,
Yes, Elsie?
that money is going to, the township will own what?
It will purchase a conservation easement. We will not own the property, but we are purchasing essentially the right to build further houses on it. That's the nexus of a conservation easement.
When you say build houses on it, and you sell the houses?
No,
Oh.
we are purchasing the right to build the houses and are principle is that we will not ever exercise that. That's the purpose of the conservation. It's typical on really any purchase of a conservation easement or the granting of a conservation easement. The owner of the property has the right to build houses. I'm taking a hypothetical example. Has the right to build houses as he sees fit within the regulations that are applicable. And instead of him building, he gives those rights to the township, and the township pays him for that. It's really something very much akin to drilling rights, which are not common in this area. But if you own a piece of land and there is hydrocarbon under it, you can sell the right to drill and produce those hydrocarbons to a drilling producing company. And for that you would get usually, depending upon what is the assessed value of the drilling rights, that is how much is down there, you would get probably a bonus, signing bonus, and royalties, indefinitely. But the two are quite synonymous. We don't have drilling rights here because there's nothing that's of value underneath our Kennett Township. But we do have surface value, that is, for conservation purposes. Preserve open spaces is really what it amounts to. Okay, any other questions? Yes?
What was it I heard about the trail on this thing? Is part of the bargain that a trail will be built?
No, not at all. If the applicant wants a trail on the conservation easement, he must demarc it. That's all. That becomes part of the...
It gives the public next to nothing then.
Well, depends upon... The IRS looks at this rather carefully. The IRS says that it serves a public purpose to be there. That is the open space.
But if it's of no benefit
It is.
to the people in the room here, that we can't take a walk along it and enjoy it,
I would urge
tell them
you,
to take it and stick it.
I would urge you to talk to the owner.
Right here.
And the owner is right here. And it's his property, it's not yours or it's not mine. And he...
Right, but if he's granting us an easement for conservation,
No, I'm sorry, you
Public
have
should
that
have-
wrong. I have to correct you. He's not, we are purchasing it from him. He's not granting it. It's like buying a house.
all right.
Okay? If he wants to put a trail, a public access trail on it, he has to say so now. He has to say so it's incorporated forever in the conservation agreement. Okay? You're shaking your head negatively.
Smells.
Are there any other, yeah.
Amy Warren, how do you come up with the price?
The price is, the property has been appraised, and it has been evaluated by our Land Conservancy Advisory Committee. Those evaluations, the arm's length appraisal by a realtor has real numbers in it, which are his opinion as to the highest and best use value and the conservation value. Our committee that looks at it does it numerically by subjective criteria. Are there wetlands on it? Are there steep slopes? Are there lots of other criteria, trees and steep slopes and wetlands, bogs, whatever else they have. There are quite a number of them. And this is all ground together subjectively. And I have to suggest that it's all very subjective. And then we look at what we think it's worth to the township, because we will pay money from our open space fund for this.
It seems to me to be subjective because the 9 acres in the Schmidt property was, I think, $230,000, quite a bit more for a lot.
200, yeah.
For a large property.
Richard Goff, Chester County Press, to follow up on my friend back here. It seems, I was curious to know why the Schmidt property at 9 acres received that amount and yet Mr. Conley's property only received $150,000. It seems to be a huge discrepancy, and I'd like you to explain it a little bit more clearly for us.
Have you seen both properties?
I have only seen the Schmidt property.
Well, I would urge you to take a look at Brian Conley's property. It's a larger piece of property, but it is much lower elevation. It has wetlands on it, which have value or no value insofar as when you are going to build a house. So this is all wrapped up in a very, very long discussion, long evaluation. And this, Brian has had this request into the township. I don't remember, Brian, how long is it? It's been a long time.
I don't remember.
Yeah, a long time. And it's been, we're finally coming to grips with making an overturn.
Thank you, Chairman.
I'd just like to make one more
I'm sorry,
comment.
behind you, I would have to point in the same direction.
What would be the main purpose of purchasing this property?
Preserve the open space.
That's it, and then nothing ever gets used.
Well, remember, in his conservation easement request, he is reserving the right to build a house and an ancillary building. He probably, and I don't know that he's going to do this, he will probably demark a public access trail, so it would be used for that purpose as well.
So it'd be two buildings, and he has to do that prior to the final
Yes.
sale.
Well, that has to be very clearly spelled out. We need a definition of the footprint. Yeah.
So are those aspects of it not spelled out at this time?
Well, they will be in the conservation easement. Nobody will sign the conservation easement unless it's, as I say, these are conditions subject to them being identified in the conservation easement.
Okay. So why was this piece of property selected subjectively? I'm guessing that there are other pieces of property that come before the township?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
This is the third one so far in a couple of years.
Okay. Why this particular piece of property when it sounds like it's going to have a couple of caveats in it that you don't really have spelled out yet?
Well, I think they have to be solidified. They're identified in my motion. Why is it coming up now? It's because,
why this particular piece of property?
well, the applicant has asked us to do that. He's anxious to preserve some of the land which will be around his house, but it will have a benefit to the township because as you drive on Hillendale going east from Byard, you will have a perfect view of it. Okay? And that's the purpose of what we're trying to do in this township is go after small pieces of property.
Follow-up question, Chairman. I was just curious when the I's will be dotted and the T's crossed, if you could guesstimate when that might be. Sometime in the next...
No, I'm not going
Assuming that Mr. Conley wants to sell it at that price.
Yeah, we
That's
haven't
the
got
offer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's correct. Okay.
I have a couple of comments,
Go ahead, please.
if I may. I want to say, first of all, that I think that the price is too low. And I think the price should be at least $200,000. I compare the LCAC evaluation of the two properties. Now bear in mind, the two properties fit together like that, and the seam between the two is the stream that runs down between them. And they are just like that.
Not quite.
And they're
because
exactly the same
one on
property.
your left hand should be much lower. They're not abutting.
The wetland is where the seams come together and the land comes up. The one on the left-hand side, Mr. Conley's, is twice as large. They have exactly the same stream, which is a tributary of the Red Clay and is therefore very important to Chester County and to Kennett Township. It also has, arguably, I haven't seen the final search on it, rare animals and rare plants that are important to the ecological fullness of this community and one of the high concerns of this township as it evaluates the land. But as I look at the two LCAC evaluations, bearing in mind they're exactly the same property except for the size, and one is on one side of the stream and the other is on the other side of the stream, the Schmidt property comes out with a 165, and the Conley property comes out with a 125. And where are the differences? Well, one of the most important is links to preserved lands, and the access of that property. It's like a keystone in Kennett Township. It goes from Tom Nail's property all the way down through Schmidt, and then you come upon Mr. Conley's property. Now, if you have that easement through there and the trail through there, that takes you to the center of the area that leads on to Case, it leads on to Miller, and leads on to the other large properties that are in the center of that large area. And right across Old Kennett Road takes up to State Line Woods, and it continues on across. It's a very, very important area. If you take out those 21 acres, you hamstring the effort of putting in trails and easements through this township. So it becomes a very, very important keystone in the overall picture of trails and easements in the township. And remember that all the way back into the comprehensive plan and continually up to the present, this township is on record as supporting trails and easements. And if we take that out of it, we hamstring it. I'm concerned about the fact that on Schmidt, even though I argued several months ago that Schmidt was overpriced, I was told by this board that we know what the value of the land is, and that's what we want to pay for it. And so we paid 50% of the appraised value of that, and it was based on, based upon a $200,000 valuation. The price was $200,000 based on an appraised value of $470,000. So that amounted to something just short of 50%. What you're looking at here for the Conley is 30% or less of what the appraised value of the lower appraised value is. And it's a significant deterioration of the value of the land when you consider it's the same land. The only difference is Conley is twice as big. So you get more for the buck. And if you drive down Hillendale and you go past McFarland and you see Schmidt on your right, and you go a little bit further and you see the stream, and then you go around that bend and then you see the Conley property, and it's a vista that goes out. And that's true, there's going to be a house out there on the far side of that horizon. Going to be a house. But you got 21 acres there, plus all of that open land that drops down to the stream. You've got trees, you've got streams, you've got bogs, you've got bog turtles. You have all kinds of things that are down in there. And plus the vista. Now, we paid 100% of the value for burnt. And I was told when I said, I drove by and I looked at it, and I was told, just because it doesn't look great to you, we're looking at it beyond just its vista value. That's one of the most important concerns when we do these kinds of projects, is the vista value. And we paid 100% for no vista on burnt. And now, when we have a beautiful vista, we are talking about 25 or 30% value. So I think that the philosophy that we are espousing here is completely wrong. We need to do this because it is so important to our long-term vista of where this township is going with easements and trails. And it's worth it to do that, to preserve it for the future and not put onto it what it could hold, which could be 7 houses or more. We're talking about not doing that. So it's a significant value to this township why we're doing it. And so I'm opposed to $150,000. I think we need to do this deal, and I think that we should be at least $200,000.
Thank you. Scudder, I'm not going to respond. There are a number of inconsistencies in what you presented. That's more than eloquent. Are there any other comments?
I have a question
George,
for
go ahead.
Mr. Sorry.
Go ahead.
For Scudder, when you were making your presentation, you threw a couple of numbers out there and I got lost. You threw a 165 number, you threw a 125 number. What were those two numbers referring to?
I was referring to, if you remember, the chairman was explaining how there is a subjective evaluation of properties for consideration for easement, and that there is a very involved spreadsheet that all the properties that are potentially subject to easement quality, if I can say it that way, it's my language, are evaluated, and it goes through resources, and then there's a whole subdivision of water, a subdivision on land, a whole section on biotic, cultural, historic, scenic, background information, and subject property. And so there's a weighted scale as you look at it. Streams, there's potential of 10 points, unless it's going to be against Burroughs Run, in which case it's a 20-point scale. And so it continues on along in all of these different areas. I'd be glad to show you these to you if you would be interested in seeing them, or the underlying work that backs it up. But when you go through the list, for the Schmidt property, the total was 165 points. And for the Conley, which, as I've said ad nauseum, is the other half of the book, one side, the other side, the numbers are 125. And I suggest that that's not a fair evaluation. It's a very subjective evaluation. That's not balanced and accurate.
I would maybe just need to have this discussion offline, because
And that's a perfect. To follow up, however, the two numbers that have been referenced here, the 165 for the Schmidt property and the 125 for the Conley property, is a difference of approximately, what would you say, 20%, 25%? It's about the difference in the value of the cost of the easement that we're proposing between the 200 and the 100. Margot, you had a question.
Certainly, I'd like the opportunity to speak. First off, I'm thrilled that the Connolly property is being considered. It is, without a doubt, one of the most important pieces of property in this township for conservation. We might look at lowlands as being insignificant, but considering the fact that 70% of this township draws its water, drinking water, from the ground, it's probably one of the most important resources. I'm the only one in the room who's been out there walking these two properties in the last year. And though I enjoyed the opportunity to see the, I will call it, small boutique farm that was the Schmidt property, the Connolly property is a phenomenal natural area. It has a confluence of multiple streams on it, and certainly has the possibility of having a bog turtle habitat, which a little turtle 4 inches wide and long can be a significant creature for preservation. But what I'd like to urge the board to do is two things to really help thwart this, discussion that occurs at this stage, which is really where it shouldn't be happening in regards to the value and the merits of a property for conservation and the value for that conservation. But I encourage them to take the tools that have been started and created and complete them by really identifying the key lands for conservation in this township in a map with prioritization provided for those lands. So I think a question came up when they become available, why do we choose, when do we choose? And that could help having had all that thinking and discussion beforehand, before that property comes to the table. And then any property that's being considered for a gift of $50,000 or more from the township has a minimum of 2 appraisals. The appraisal value is not for the actual resource that's being extinct or conserved as much as the elimination of a building right. So if Mr. Schmidt had 3 to 4 building rights and Mr. Connolly has 7 building rights, Mr. Schmidt is retaining 1, Mr. Connolly is retaining 1. Mr. Schmidt has given up 3, Mr. Connolly is giving up 6. So the reduction of 6 building rights, so 6 less property, people and services, et cetera, that is being impacted on the township in terms of cost, that's what we should be providing the appraised value on. The LCAC bases a lot of their subjective evaluation on the RPP, which is the resource prioritization mapping that's happened in the back, and the conglomerative map that the township got made from the Brandywine Conservancy, trying to actually capture and identify those values that the township and the planning commission and all have put forward. So again, the value of having a map to remove the stress that's happening up here at the Board of Supervisors and a difference of opinion, and then the set rule that any evaluation of township money gifts above $50,000 gets met with 2 appraisals. I really hope the board considers that
Is there
option.
are there any other comments? Hearing none, I move to
Glenn Lacy had her hand up.
Yes.
Gwen Lacy from the Land Conservancy. Thank you, Margot. I agree wholeheartedly, and also according to Act 153, whenever you use taxpayer dollars...
Are you a resident of the township?
No, but I was with the organization that holds a lot of easements in this township. And so I'd like to just say that according to Act 153, which we also said when we were here in the township, we encourage you have to have a conservation plan for the township by law and public hearings when you're using open space tax dollars. So again, what Margot just said is actually, you're legally bound to that by taking in tax dollars. Thank you.
Are there any other comments? Please.
In fact, there are bog turtles on the property. That would reduce the amount that you could possibly develop that property.
Well, that's, you see, this is all contingent. If Brian is accepting this and going forward, and he is going to build a house on it, he is going to have to do a bog turtle search.
I already have.
Okay,
They're
that's
right.
fine.
It's bog turtle habitat. There are no bog turtles.
Okay.
There are no bog turtles within.
Those are very perfunctory questions. Thank you, Brian. One more.
My only comment, I guess, would be, whenever we can take something from subjective to objective, I think it brings a clearer view to everyone.
Of course it does.
And I think, the word subjective has been used quite a bit. I think if there is a way that the supervisors can get together, maybe by the suggestions that are made, and make it more objective, I think it will be much more understandable to all of us.
I agree with you entirely. That's been the subject of a great deal of study and debate. And we're, at this moment, we're where we are. Okay. One more question, please. Go ahead, Bill.
I think I know we've been pushing for some time now to have the open space procedures and process reviewed. I've made the comment a number of times that, and we don't do things in our township like other ones do. The proposed or requested easements come into the Board of Supervisors, which is very unusual in this general region. And I don't know whether you're working on a new process for this, but we would like to see this come through very soon, and I'd like to see, my personal belief, that the LACA produce or have a lot more authority in this whole thing and coordination. We haven't heard anything about John Gatt, who's supposedly working I guess he's working now with us. Is he on the roll? Is he being paid?
He's a consultant, not an employee.
Is he working?
Yes.
Okay. The only thing as a follow-up, I urge you to move on this. Get a process that starts out with an independent group. The other thing is something that I'm disappointed, but it happened. There was a press release by the Land Conservancy on the 12th, and it appeared in the Kennett Township, it appeared in the Kennett paper on the 13th, and it says, "The Land Conservancy pulls trail project from Kennett Township." And they were working on it.
Excuse me, Bill, I have to interrupt here.
Yeah.
There was a motion on the floor. If you are going to talk about the motion, please do, but what you're getting into has nothing to do with the motion on the floor.
I'll bring it up later.
Bill,
Thank you.
about the open space procedure,
Yes.
I have been asking the LCAC where they stand on that. They wrote back just tonight that they have the draft proposal that they're going to send out to the board tomorrow.
Okay.
Does their draft proposal include value as representing dollars also?
I have not seen it yet. The supervisors worked with the LCAC, and I haven't seen their proposal yet.
I'm going to cut the conversation off now, because what you're talking about has nothing to do with the motion on the floor. Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments about the motion on the floor? Seeing none, I move the question. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Opposed. All right. Now we'll go on to the next. There's a new issue that is not on the old business agenda, and it has to do with the suggestion last month that we reduce the real estate tax by a factor of 50%. We've kicked this around, and we were a little late in putting a vote on our website, asking people to vote for or against the idea. We had, I believe, 50, am I right, Lisa, 43 responses. 86% of them said they were in favor of reducing it, and the balance said that they were not. No, that's not quite right. They were interested in seeing it studied further, that is, the issue of reducing the taxes. I would like to propose that we go ahead and reduce our real estate taxes for the year 2013. At the end of 2013, it would be up for renewal if it was to be reapproved. This would be a trial to see whether the tax is something that is meaningful and we need to reinstall it or not. And I think it's a very popular thing. It seems that there are a lot of people in the township. If I can extend this small sample to greater folks that would like to see it at least tried. And therefore, I make that motion that we we reduce the real estate taxes in Kennett Township by a factor of 50% for the year 2013. Great.
When you hear resolutions, I'll amend that to say, ask Lisa to prepare a resolution doing
Yes,
that.
that would be, make a motion to.
I just want to say that I have a problem with you guys reducing taxes on a trial basis.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not going to be trial.
We won't need to say that in the resolution. We can always change it.
Residents are not going to be happy if you reduce taxes and
raise them, and I appreciate that.
Resolution will say it's going to be reduced. That's
Yeah.
what it will say. I move that she prepare a resolution to that effect.
Therefore, I will second it.
And I, on the discussion side of it, I'm opposed to doing that. First of all, our real estate taxes include, among other things, a library tax.
When we're talking about
It's part of our real estate tax.
That's all I
I'm
said.
talking about our real estate tax for the township, not the
I'm suggesting that the language of your motion is not precise enough to be clear as to what it's saying. Secondly, it puts us, the budget that we've already reviewed and voted on essentially tonight will be in arrears by $75,000. Thirdly, we have no idea what the impact will be of taking out $75,000.
$150,000, go ahead.
150. Yeah, okay, thank you. So it's an even more severe impact. This is kind of a shoot from the hip kind of what can we do now? And I'm suggesting that although I campaigned on reducing the taxes, and I'm in favor of, in general, reducing the real estate taxes. Nevertheless, we have not thought it through, nor have we talked about the ramifications, nor have we vetted it through our committees, nor have we done anything except put up something that was on the website that I didn't know about, perfectly candid.
Right, well, the three of you asked me last month to put something on the website to get public input, so I did.
I'm concerned that we don't have enough thought in this process to be able to do the proper due diligence in whether we should be going forward in this fashion, and if so, how should we do it? So I'm very much opposed, under these circumstances, to going forward in this way.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Did something happen to stir this reduction, or is...
Well, it's probably been the complete budget process that we've gone through starting in last August. We've reviewed our expenditures, we've reviewed what we're required to pay here and there and what we expect as tax revenue and other kinds of revenue other than the income tax. And we do have a surplus in this township, although we have made a long-range forecast as to what we might need in the dim future that would impinge that surplus. We still feel that there is enough there that we can weather this reduction in taxes quite easily. Thank you for that question. No other comments or questions? I move the resolution. All in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Opposed. Okay. Thank you. All right.
Does this mean that the resolution still has to be approved? There'd be a resolution to cut the tax.
It's approved as of this moment. The resolution is approved.
It's gonna have to be approved.
Can I make one more comment about this?
We don't have a resolution.
No, we don't have.
You don't have a resolution.
We have to.
Yeah, when it gets in a written form, we will be licensed to approve it, that's all.
You said we had some long-term, large funds, large expenses coming up. And at the last meeting, we asked for a rough estimate, at least, of a number of large expenses that we were going to face in the coming years. And that's the facts that we were asking for. You said, we've done that. So what did it say?
We're not finished yet.
We're not quite finished with it still.
Oh, you're not finished with it? Well, how can you pass?
Okay,
This is premature.
Yeah,
No, it's
this
not
resolution is premature.
Yes, it is.
I'm going to go to the next item of business.
You have all my
Business of Bikeway qualified engineer approval. Lisa, you can have that.
At the December 4th work session, John Hadrick and Tom Nail of the Bikeway Committee made the following statement, and this is on the Bikeway qualified engineer bid. One facet of the Kennett Bikeway project is contracting for the construction inspection services, which is a key element in monitoring and documenting the implementation of the approved design. This contract will be administered by Kennett Township. It is expected to cost about $100,000. To this end, the Board of Supervisors executed a policy and procedure agreement on July 16, 2012 with PennDOT. The agreement defines the bid process for the contract. The project team has adhered to the terms of the agreement and is now at the point where the Qualification Selection Committee has reviewed the submitted letters of interest. 8 were submitted, and is recommending to the Board the ranked assessment of the best qualified firms. Upon approval of the Board of Supervisors, the top 3 recommended will be sent to PennDOT for review. The committee consists of John Hadrick, Tom Nail, Bill McLaughlin, and Roger Lyle. They reviewed the 8 bids submitted, and they came up with the top 3 to be submitted to PennDOT. The supervisors at their December 4th work session agreed to have the top 3 sent to PennDOT for review, and tonight the supervisors just need to reaffirm their action.
How do we do that?
You guys make a motion that you agree for...
Just
send the top three.
to PennDOT for review.
So,
I'll second that.
And that's over, so if you want to
So
go
do I,
ahead.
but that's all
Yeah,
right.
but we still have to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Paperwork, all right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
The work session, I think Chairman Elaine gave the approval for John to send it into PennDOT. And you may have seen John's recent email that said PennDOT has now reaffirmed that in following the procedure that they had set forth, our committee can select the top engineering firm, which we have done. And so John has a letter of approval on that basis
Okay.
now from PennDOT, which selects Gilmore Associates.
Okay,
Good.
thanks, Bill.
Move on to the next one, several.
The Communications Committee, the resident named Ted Moxon is before the board to vote if you want to appoint him to the Communications Committee.
I so move that we appoint Ted Moxon to the Communications Committee.
second. I would like to discuss it.
Please
It
go.
has nothing to do with Ted Moxon, who I have not met, and so I'm not speaking about Ted Moxon. I am concerned about the procedure that has been followed. 2 months ago, I presented Joe Duffy's name to be on that committee. Joe had expressed to me an interest in doing that, and so I presented that name. That name went into the committee
Go ahead, I'm listening.
and was set aside, because, I was told, the committee had decided that it was not going to add new members at this time. It was going to remain as it was to complete the initial work that it was going to do. And all of a sudden, I learned Joe's name is still sitting someplace next to the wastebasket, apparently. And then I hear that Ted Moxon's name has been presented by the chairman of the supervisors to be a member of the committee. And now we are being asked to vote on that. I'm totally opposed to this kind of procedure. We either are going to honor our request to our citizens that if they want to be considered, that they present themselves and that they be given a fair share, or we don't. If we're going to do it as a favored sort of way of doing it, then I guess so be it, if that's what's going to be. I'm opposed to that kind of behavior. And it has nothing to do with Joe Duffy either. It could be anybody in this room or anybody in this township. But that's the way it works, and I think that's most unfortunate, and I am totally opposed to it. And as a consequence, I would vote opposed to Ted Moxon, not because of anything Ted did, not because I know Ted and have concern about what he would do, but just that the procedure is wrong and it should be reconsidered in its totality.
I don't know the process of Joe. I know that it was discussed about Joe. I know that Bob Listerman, who's on the committee, brought up Joe. But I don't know the whole process with Joe, so I can't speak on that.
It's my understanding, Scar, that when we put out requests for nominations, they be submitted to Lisa. As far as I know, Lisa did not receive any. Bob did, but that's neither here nor there. That was the date and requested.
I did it formally, I did it. I mean, and I'm not saying that Lisa, I'm suggesting they doesn't remember, but I did it.
Okay. All those in favor of this motion? Aye.
Opposed?
Okay. Go ahead for the next. Communication status of Chandler Mill Bridge. It seems as though PennDOT has finally agreed on the final design of the replacement for the Chandler Mill Bridge. The only thing I was able to determine is that they're going to, when they put new abutments in, which they are apparently going to have to do, that they will be made of hornblende stone. The upper part, I have not seen a rendition of it. I fear that it could be a two-lane concrete bridge. That's all I can tell you, because I have not seen a copy of the pictures. Yes.
Gwen Lacey again from the Land Conservancy. We've been working on the bridge since 2006. I spoke to Sid New at PennDOT, the consultant for the 106 hearings that you always have when there's an historic resource in question. And I was advised that there are no plans. We're waiting on the county feasibility report to be released hopefully in January, 30-day comment period, followed by a 106 hearing. They also have an informal survey of the township about the bridge and what residents would like to see happen. And first of all, rehab the current bridge, leaving it as a one-lane bridge, was 42.8%. Replace the current bridge as a pedestrian-only bridge, given that it's part of the Chester County bike route, as well as the developing Red Clay Greenway, 57.1%. Replace the current bridge with a new two-lane bridge, 0%. There's also some comments. I'd like to ask, and please put this for the record, that we've been asking repeatedly in the county if the township would take back this bridge. It could have been done yesterday. Instead, we're 6 years into it, and I'd really just like to put that request out to the supervisors to consider take back. Instead of lowering taxes, that funding could be used to take back the bridge. $2.5 million for a two-lane replacement, $150,000 for a rehab, $50,000 for pedestrian only.
Do I understand you to say that to rehab the existing bridge would cost $150,000? Is that what you said?
Yes.
I don't know that there's an engineer anywhere that has looked at that bridge that would agree with
Liechtenstein did.
No, well.
Yeah, we have the 2007
report.
report.
Very old subject. It's been debated back and forth. You know the township's position. We have
What is the township's
many
position
times
for the
we will
record?
not own the bridge. Okay?
And
Now, let's
and
go
that's
on.
been voted?
Yes, it was voted a long time ago when.
Well, I asked that it be
Go
reconsidered.
ahead.
Why don't we want to own the bridge?
Because of the liability and the eventual cost
Off the board.
maintaining the bridge.
Maintaining it, repairing,
Rebuilding it, replacing it. We looked into this very, very seriously a long time ago, and it's just not, there's no movement among, certainly the Board of Supervisors, to even reconsider it. Go ahead, please.
Kate DuPont, I'm a township resident, and have you considered and looked at the cost of making it a pedestrian bridge?
No.
Would
No,
you
we haven't.
would you look into that?
We
Because
have no say in it.
You do
That's
if you
true.
took back the bridge.
Okay, let's go on. We're going around in a circle.
Mike, can you explain to me the source of your information, which you told us is informal?
It's from the
How do you know this?
The consulting engineer.
Because I, among a lot of other people that are in this room and elsewhere, are signed up to be receiving information on that and to have our opinions considered. And none of us have received any information from any of the processes that are going on. So,
I'm not responsible for what the engineer officially says. I happen to know the engineer, and when I speak, I ask very simple questions as to where it stands, and if the engineer tells me something, I will repeat it here.
and I do want to make one thing clear, and that is when you said that the Board of Supervisors are clear on this. Two of the members of the Board of Supervisors are clear on this. I am not. I am not in
It's
agreement.
never been addressed to you, Scudder. This is ancient history. This happened a number of years ago.
I understand that, but I want to make sure that
If you
you're
want to
talking
reopen
about.
the subject, we can do that outside of here. I'm not interested in reopening the subject.
Public
meeting?
I just want to say only two who were involved, and that's true.
Two of us here.
Yeah.
That's right, we were, but there was other supervisors.
I know, you're talking about what happened prior to my time.
That's right.
But if you're talking about now, I'm not
If
in
you feel
agreement.
that you want to reopen the whole subject again, let's tackle it, not in the public session here, because it doesn't make any sense. And we'll consider it, okay?
Thank you.
I'm going to take one more question on this subject, and you have it.
What is the new business then, if we're not talking about it?
I was merely giving a status
Status.
report. It's not, we have categories, where else would we have put this category subject on our agenda? Where would you have had it? Where would you have had it?
I don't know, that's why I'm
Well, we
asking
don't
you.
have any, we have these categories.
My guess would be old business because it goes way back.
Oh, that's a good point, okay.
Thank you, Lou.
I wanted to go back to the communications committee part,
Go ahead.
because I wanted to clarify here. We have talked about Joe Duffy. So it's not that I forget, it's that Joe didn't contact me directly, neither did Ted Moxon. So that's my point with the communications committee. So we all know that Joe went to the open committee. And Mike's point is that he didn't contact us directly, but neither did. That's my only point back to that. I just wanted to clarify it.
I would just like to know, I'm Diana Rarickson Township, if Joe Duffy didn't present himself, if Ted Moxon didn't present himself, then there wasn't any vetting of either one. So how can a decision be made based on lack of information? That's my question.
You had a question?
That was in fact my question.
Okay, well, there's not much more I can say about it. Okay? Now, go on to the next one, please.
There's nothing to
But that's not an answer.
This is not an answer.
With all due respect, Chairman, that is not an answer.
It's not correct. It's not a correct response.
What do you have against Joe Duffy?
Was vetted by me. He came in here, and we spent a very long hour. He was recommended by other people in the township, and he seemed like a decent candidate, and I have nominated him for membership of the
Did you do the same with Mr. Duffy? To be fair and square about this, did you do the same with Mr. Duffy? He should have had the same chance.
Did he have
And
that
I
chance?
thought, my thinking is, and it always has been, that there are 3 people up there who are our supervisors, and all 3 of them have to be in tune, at least talking to each other, communicating about issues. That is part of the process that we wish from all of you. And it's process that I think is lacking and has been lacking in this entire meeting, from one topic to another.
Have you asked a question here, or?
I have asked a question as to whether you
The
whether you gave the
asked is
same
about vetting
opportunity to
Joe
Mr.
is that
Duffy
correct?
to be interviewed.
We know Joe Duffy very well in this township.
Did you give him the same opportunity that you gave Ted Moxon as of the time that
I
he
have to
presented
repeat very
himself
clearly
as a
what I said to
candidate
you just
for that
now.
committee?
I'm not sure, no matter what I say, it's not going to satisfy
I
you.
just think that you need to answer the question that I'm asking. It's a very specific question. Did you give him the same
We vetted
opportunity?
Joe Duffy thoroughly.
Who made the decision in the end as to, apparently Mr. Scudder did not even know that you had interviewed Mr. Moxon and did not know that you had not interviewed Mr. Duffy. I don't think that's a process that is correct for a township supervisors.
Thank you for your
It's
opinion.
inconsistent.
I'm not going to call on you.
Well, I'll just speak then, because I'm a township resident, and I have that right. So on the same subject, do you have a policy or procedure for nominating people?
No.
Or do you just personally make the
No.
decision based
Answer
on
your
your
question.
personal interview?
A combination of, we do not have a formal process.
So you made the decision on your own?
We did,
Who's we?
for the supervisor.
So you and Bob did, and that's it? And Scudder didn't know?
That's a
Okay,
violation.
thank you.
You're welcome.
You should establish a process.
The township engineer had brought up the issue with us that when residents submit building permits and they include retaining walls, there's often lack of information in the submittal. So our engineer created a policy that we have put into resolution format for the township, to give out with building permit packets so that residents understand clearly what they need to submit for retaining walls above 4 feet to cut down on the cost for the applicant and the review time. I've sent this to all 3 supervisors, and it is on the website for review. And it's just a resolution, like I said, to provide homeowners, developers, and contractors with guidance pertaining to the permitting and construction of retaining walls.
I will move that we adopt it, but I would like to point out that on page 2, under the section tiered retaining walls, there is a reference to, quote, "to avoid this condition, a general room, R-O-O-M, of thumb." I think that's probably rule.
Okay.
Very good.
Change that.
I'll second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. First and last. Okay. Roadwork?
Yes.
Okay, the road report from November 12.
I have an old, a new business matter before we go on. As many know, while I was a candidate, I made a request for certain information, which I won when I went to the state, and the township took an appeal from that. That appeal still pends. Now, Lisa and I and our respective experts have spent a great deal of time trying to work out a resolution to that, and as a consequence, the township council has spent a great deal of time working out an agreement with me as an individual, trying to resolve this problem, which is on the trial list in common pleas. So it's going to cost us all a whole lot of money if we don't get this thing resolved soon. Now, I have been in touch with our council, your council, and asked where is the agreement, and he assured me a month ago or more that it has been forwarded to the township for my two brother supervisors to review and make a resolution or a decision as to whether it was going to be accepted or not. As recently as today, I asked him what's the status of that, and he said he has not yet heard. So I am asking the supervisors at this table, other than myself, to please make a decision on this, so that if we're going to resolve it, and I hope we do it soon, because otherwise we all spend a lot of money and we tie up the court's time on something which is basically we've all agreed on.
I'll just give you an update on that.
The
Supervisors have reviewed the agreement and they have some questions for Bob Adams and they plan to meet with him.
Good.
And we're trying to, I just sent that to Pat and we're trying to work out a time with the holiday schedule here where everybody can meet.
Good, thank you.
Okay. The road report from November. Road report from November 12 to December 10 of 2012. Our 2008 dump truck body was sanded and primed and then repainted before the winter. This is done on our trucks that don't have the stainless steel body, so it's annual rent. Wood chips were hauled out to residents who called and asked for delivery. Also, the township has asphalt millings available for residents who need them, and if you ask, while supplies last, we will deliver some to you. Base repairs were done in Longwood Estate subdivision. Patches were milled and repaved. This subdivision gets oil and chips this coming spring. Township radios have now been switched to the new split band channels. This is a mandate from the FCC. All radios that cannot be switched can no longer be used from this time forward. Drainage on Leslie Road was worked on Anson Nixon parking lot is next. Our yard waste pile is growing. More residents are using this service as they find about it. It's a very useful thing. You must be a resident of the township to use this. Also, please, if you're using a contractor for taking yard waste from your property, please advise him that he is not allowed to dump at that location. Only the residents themselves can haul to that particular dump. It's getting to be almost the size that it was about 4 months ago when it was milled into compost. So be very careful of it. It's a very valuable resource. The asphalt millings are there, and you're welcome to them. That's it. Now, last is web extensions.
We have to do this.
She has 2 cents.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes.
This is the Granite Ridge proposal. It's on McFarland Road between Rosedale and Hilldale. This was approved for preliminary plan at the November meeting. The Planning Commission approved it for final plan at their December 4th meeting. The property consists of 38.498 acres in the R4 district, and the applicant is proposing to construct 14 buildings with 8 units in each building. I asked the board to approve the final land development plan for Granite Ridge with the following conditions. Obtain approval from the Chester County Health Department for the NPDES permit by final plan signing. Obtain DEP approval for the planning modules by final plan signing. The applicant must pay $50,000 for the traffic signal improvements prior to release of the plans for recordation. Applicant must pay $16,517 for the upgrade to the pump station prior to the release of plans for recordation. The applicant must sign the Kennett Township rules and regulations for site development by final plan signing. The applicant must establish an escrow account for public improvements secured by a letter of credit and a cash escrow account for engineering inspections during construction by final plan signing. Applicant must pay any outstanding fees for engineering review costs by final plan signing. The fee in lieu of land dedication fee based on 112 units is waived due to the provision of open space, which is all located on this property, this area up here. The applicant must pay sewer connection fees for 112 EDUs. The sewer connection fees must be paid as follows: 56 EDUs at the time of plan signing and 56 EDUs at the time the first building permit is issued for the first building in phase 2.
I move we approve that development.
I second it. Are there any questions? Margot?
Since we've had some issues in the past in regards to not having proper protections from the township side for future residents moving in, like escrows or bonds or something like that for construction bonds, are we moving in that direction for this project as a great primary example of how we can do it right?
There are certain requirements for escrow funds. There hasn't been, as far as I know, any change in those procedures and as to what is required to be escrowed and what we are unable to do. Not escrows for certain things. Those are being followed, and they will continue to be followed, and they will certainly apply to this land development.
So our lessons learned for the 3 projects, like Victoria Gardens, the apartment complex on the other side of the red clay, and, those 3, what's the one where the roads weren't getting finished and the builder,
You can't help bankruptcy.
Yeah. So we learned from that?
We can only require them to escrow for certain items, and we can only require them to increase 10% every year.
But didn't we talk about a performance bond?
We can't do that.
Can't do that.
We've looked into that, and we can't do it.
So there's nothing we can do to protect ourselves?
Remember
Well,
Bob
that's not
Adams wrote an opinion on that.
That's not the way I read his letter.
Okay, well,
He favored the way we've been doing it, but I didn't hear him say it's not possible to do it.
okay.
I'll look at the letter
We
again, but I
can
don't
look
remember
into
that
it
one.
again. That's
Just putting it out since it's a big project.
It's a legal issue, but would you take that up with our counsel, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
Now, I raised the question in the first place a year ago, so I'd be glad to continue with that, because I think it's an important
Do
alternative.
you guys need the memo again from Bob Adams on that?
Sure. Is that handy to you?
Yeah,
That'd be helpful.
because I don't, Bob did all the research on it, so I'll just send you the memo again.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys.
It was a motion.
There's a motion on the floor to approve this.
face.
Thank you.
Same to you, John.
This is a proposal for Tague lumber, which is located at the intersection of Rosedale and Farland Roads. This is the old Dandy lumber. Tague Lumber Company is going to rehab some of the buildings, tear down a few buildings, and open it back up as a lumber company. The plan was recommended for preliminary approval at the Planning Commission's meeting on December 4th. I asked the Board of Supervisors approve the preliminary plans for the Tague lumber property with the following conditions: obtain an NCDES permit, receive DEP approval for the plan module exemption. The applicant must sign the Kennett Township rules and regulations for site development by final plan signing. The applicant must establish an escrow account for public improvements secured by a letter of credit, and a cash escrow account for engineering inspections during construction by final plan signing. And the applicant must pay any outstanding fees for engineering and reviews by final plan signing.
I move we approve the preliminary plan for Tague lumber as presented.
Second that.
Any questions from the audience? Any questions from anyone? All those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas.
Thanks. We have two requests for extension, TI Ken property until January 31st next year, and have property until March 30th next year. Move we approve both extensions.
I second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Does anybody have anything else to say, please? Happy. You haven't said a word, so you're first and then you're next.
Frank Myers,
Okay.
from Manor. I want to find if there's been any progress in obtaining the escrow funds from the bank.
Yes, our township solicitor has signed all the paperwork. We're waiting for him to get the check. In the meantime, we've been working on a punch list to prioritize the items that will be done first. And then we will, in January, February, once we get everything prioritized. And by the way, we're talking about Penn's Manor development, sorry. It's located, the one Margo was talking about over by the red clay. And we're going to create a bid package for the entire outstanding items, and then we'll have a general contractor and subcontractors for all the other items out there. We've hired a contractor to plow for the winter.
Yes. Is there any way that a representative from the community of Penn's Manor could be included in the prioritization?
Yes, you will be. We're waiting for our engineer to give us his proposal, and then we're going to set up a meeting with Penn's Manor, HOA, and representatives from the township.
Okay. And who do you sign up as a contractor for snow removal?
His name, the company name is Bell Fiore.
Okay.
I can give you that contact information.
Sorry, Bob. You were up next. Go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Linda Ingham-Thron. I'm here representing SCOOP, which is Southern Chester County Organization on Transportation, and TMAC, Transportation Management Association of Chester County. And we're the people that every 2 years have to go around and present a grant so that our bus in Southern Chester County can remain running. And I don't know if you're familiar with the SCOOP route. It is free to all senior citizens. And it actually runs all the way from Oxford and mostly runs every hour back and forth to Longwood. And then 4 times a day actually runs up to Westchester, so you can make all the connections and go anywhere to the airport and wherever. But again, predominantly the funds are coming from a job access and reverse commute grant from the federal government. And every 2 years we have to competitively apply for funds. And as you know, with the situation every year, there's been about $1 million cut off the Philadelphia area. And again, we're down another $1 million. Last year, or 2 years ago, we made it through, I guess there were 7 cuts. And 2 years ago, the commissioners in Chester County, for the first time, put up money for transit in the county. And so they supported, to the tune of $86,000, they supported both the scoot route and the link, which runs up along Route 30. I'm here this evening to ask if you would kindly send a letter of support, because showing that all the communities that the bus passes through and supports is very, very helpful in the competition. The other thing, we're kind of up against the wall this year. We have an RFP out, and it looks like Kraft Bus, who has run it ever since we set it up nearly 16 years ago, probably will not be the carrier. So we're not quite sure what the new bottom line is, but we are looking for approximately 5.6% of the total. Whenever you run a public transit, a successful bus returns about 41% in the fare box. And we're doing approximately that. So it's relatively successful, and of course, you know, it's been tied to a recent study on housing in southern Chester County. Because we don't have any place in the county where fewer and fewer places where there's worker people can afford to live, not necessarily low end, but from all of our services. And so that is a major part. Also, on the Route 1 corridor study, it has become the #1 item for all the businesses that participated, and the residents still, public transportation in southern Chester County is primary. So I did bring along this evening, I do have, if you have any questions, I can tell you how much it actually costs, I can tell you how many people get on in your township, anything that you want to know, and I did also bring along a letter, some idea of what the letter of support might say, with an address to send it back. And the grant has to be in by January 8th, so it is better. Any questions?
What is your annual budget?
The actual annual budget for the scoot, the expense for those budgets is approximately, for this next year, will be $931,000. We're getting somewhere around $500,000 is usually what we get from the JARC grant, the Job Access and Rules Committee. And then we have Fairbox Return, and we have the county. And we do have some of the businesses, mushroom growers we support. So we do get individual, Penn Township has put in $1,000, Lions Club. We've got several donations from all kinds of service organizations.
Okay. So leave that letter, if you would, here, so we can address it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. What else?
Well, again, Mike, I simply want to publicly acknowledge the work Lisa did on the website, putting all of the information for this meeting on the website so that before coming, we could see what was going to go on. And I would like to give her public acclamation for that. I spoke with her privately before, but I think she deserves to be commended publicly for what was done.
Great.
Thank you.
We all appreciate your comment. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
Chief, I'd like to ask you a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Could you tell us a little bit about the new software that you now have for dealing with crime in the township? And I'm asking you about whether it's part of your budget, and how it works, and why this was appropriate for the township to be responsible for.
Okay, when I first started here, I was to handle traffic and daytime house burglaries. What was the problem?
I think it's important that the township knows this, because it is an important ongoing development of the upgrading of the police force in the township as part of the county system, I think.
Okay, let me give you a little brief background. I was
a little surprised at I wasn't surprised, what the lieutenant does by the state police, I double. For example, we handled 2 major burglaries just last week in the township. Burglaries seem to increase at Christmas time. And the problem we had after Kennett Square left, Kennett Square was just to do traffic, and you could contract them individually for certain services. But while that marked car was out there, the house burglary rate in the daytime was down. When they left, it went back up. So they needed a presence here. So initially, I was to naturally have to handle everything. Once you start your own police department, 911 calls go to you, or they go to the state police depending on who's working. Myself and my partner now supplement the state police. That's what our focus is. But we will have to handle anything that comes to them, we have to handle also. Well, to keep the cost down, because I'm also always concerned with taxpayers, I never had to use this software system. It was very expensive, and for one man, it didn't make much sense. And the first year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, there wasn't that much going on. Calls didn't come directly to me through the township building like they did this morning, in addition to the 911 calls. So I did everything on paper. When somebody asked me for a report, other than crime I can find you. But if you ask me for like a routine call or something else, suspicious vehicle, whatever, I got to go find it by paper. And I have to rely on my memory, and my long-term memory is fairly good. Short time, but long-term is pretty good. And that's because I'm involved in handling the incident. Now that I have somebody aiding me, I'm not going to remember what he did because I'm not involved in the incident. Plus, the township has gotten a lot busier in the last few years. So the software system does just what the lieutenant had in his hand. He had a software printout, and it shows you everything that we would do in 30 days, 90 days. The information you would get would be a lot more accurate, and it would be a lot faster. The 911 calls come down to us every day on a computer email that's emailed to us. So we see what the state police handle, and of course, naturally, that's what we handle. And we handle what the accidents too. So the software system, what it needs is, now that we've gotten busier, and I've handled so many things over the last 5 years, I've got names all over the place that I need to identify. So I needed the software system to do it. The departments around here, Kennett Square, New Garden, just about everybody in the county, with the exception of maybe Westchester, is a lot bigger, they use this Cody program. Well, Cody, you don't bid Cody, they submit a proposal to you, which is acceptable, and it's their first step is 1 to 5 officers, and 1 to 5 officers with that price is should get us 7 years. All the upgrades and the training and everything. So when somebody asks me how many suspicious vehicles do you handle in the last 90 days, I type in suspicious vehicles and I'm going to get that. If somebody calls and asks me for a certain suspect or somebody I stopped last week on Cato Road, I'm going to know what we had him for now that I stopped him and he was wanted for something else somewhere else in the county. That's the type of information that will come out. It'll be a lot more thorough and a lot more quicker. Plus the initial crime reports that I type, my wife types for me. Legal secretary, I do the dictation, she types those reports. They go to the district attorney's office for prosecution. They'll all be done through the Cody system. And budget-wise, we talked about this a number of years. I think we started probably 3 or 4 years ago and trying to keep the dollars down. I was trying to get as far as I could. I like being under budget at the end of the year, so I didn't purchase it being one person. But that's got to change for a number of reasons. Once to give myself and the state police a better idea of even the routine calls that sometimes figure into a crime report. I don't see theirs. The lieutenant has been here since he's been a trooper. I was here a long time before he started in law enforcement. And we started talking about that the other day, about how do some of these suspicious vehicles play into these daytime house burglaries. Well, I can't tell you what suspicious vehicles we have unless I remember them. As far as my own work goes, being old school, I have a daily activity sheet. So if you ask me on a certain day where I've been or whatever, I can tell you. And being old school, I also said to the new officer, you have to do this too. Because Chester County, there's a computer in the car that gives me a lot of background information, wanted people, that type of thing. That down here, I have to put it on a thumb drive because we can't air it back into the station because it's terrain here. We don't always get radio service. So Basically, what I'm looking for, I think it's, the funds have been here over the last 3 to 4 years, and the funds were here this year, but I used up some extra money when I was off. I wasn't off, I couldn't drive. So I don't know where we figure, but I think we're okay, and we're definitely needed it for next year, but I needed to purchase it now.
But that money is part of your regular allotted budget.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Bob, you've had your hand up a number of times.
Bob Listerman, resident. My question was just for clarification. I know for Victoria Gardens, there was an issue about the township doing the work versus them doing it themselves as far as cost difference to the net project. Is that any different for Penn's Manor, or are we going to have to do it a different way?
Same rules, they're going to have to pay more.
Penn's Manor is public road.
Yeah.
Victoria Gardens will not.
That's different, okay.
Okay, any other questions?
Ralph Hunter from Falcons Lair, and I'm just here to let Lisa know and your entire staff, the Chief McCarthy and Roger, that you did an exceptional job for our community this past year. Gave us considerable attention and did an exceptional job. To that, we thank you and wish you happy holidays.
Thank you so much, we appreciate that. Okay. On that note,
And bills?
wish you a Merry Christmas, we have bills to pay, and meeting is adjourned.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.